Hello everyone, welcome to Grow Your Future with Luxland. I am Zah, CEO of Luxland Investments. We are joined today by Marc Fator, our Business Development Manager. How are you?
Very well, how are you?
Very good, thank you. What are we talking about today, Marc? You're the big
today,
boss.
Today, the very exciting compound effect.
Your favourite?
My favourite.
You love it.
I do. It's a very interesting topic. Very interesting topic if you do understand it. And I do want to start this podcast off by reading out the Albert Einstein quote that I've got down there, which is, "Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. Compound interest is the most powerful force in the universe." Pretty powerful statement by one of the smartest men in the world, and it makes pretty clear sense as well when you read it over and over and over again. It's you can read it the first time and it makes sense, you know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's so true. Like, if you understand it, you'll know. Invest now, let stuff grow. Invest later, it's probably too late.
I don't think many people really understand how powerful the force is. It wasn't until I kind of got involved with property and saw the growth of property. So even when I first invested in property, I don't think I really appreciated the compound effect because I didn't really understand it. I mean, I know, you've only just started to get excited about it in the last probably year or so because you've studied it, and probably one of the best books to read on the compound effect for you listeners out there who aren't really too up to scratch with it would be The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. Very, very famous book, and pretty much breaks down the compound effect, not just for property, but for any little thing that you do in your life.
Yeah.
And, I don't think people fully grasp it, because if they did, they would be implementing better habits throughout their life. So, little things like, people say that you need to exercise every day and you need to, read every day, and all of those, good habits that we try and enforce on people. They don't end up doing it because they think they look at all these high achievers and high performers, and they're reading a book a week. They're doing 15k runs in every morning. And people look at that and think, oh, well, I can't do that, right? But what the compound effect is about, it's about doing little things over a long period of time, and then that compounds into better habits. And most of the time we're talking about money, so it's compounding in interest. So compound interest is probably what we learn about in school. I think I remember learning about it in school, but it's not really sort of.
Well, it doesn't sink in then as well.
No, well they don't really convert it into a practical sense.
No.
So that's why when a lot of people get involved with property, they see the benefits of it in a practical sense, because that's when they make the money.
Yeah. It's so applicable to, like you were just saying before, anything and everything in life, and that's how you start. Yeah, but people, I mean, again, going back to the social media and stuff like that, it's such a good tool for us, but at the same time, it also shows us the end result of a lot of things. So everyone thinks, if what's funny, I was thinking about the other day actually, the use of all these like time lapse type of videos where people are. I remember seeing a video come across online, and it was some guy putting together a homemade welder. Like, he made a welder from scratch using parts from a microwave, etc., etc. But this was a 10-minute video, and in that 10 minutes he had built this whole thing. Again, there could have been snippets that we don't see, and it could have been missing a part, but to any other normal person, let's say they have all the bits and pieces there, it's probably going to take a whole day. You know what I mean? If it's the first attempt at it, or maybe you know what you're doing and you're following a manual or whatever. But it's a long process. But again, the social media condenses it. We want to show something straight away, and before you know it, it's a product. And people unfortunately look at property in that same sense, I feel, where they just just think, right, I'm going to buy a property, and for example, a nice new property, and all of a sudden it's going to make money, where not the case, it does take time, and that's what we do need to realise. Again, going back, remember we were talking last time about renovations. If you don't know what you're doing, don't research before you start doing it, because it's not an overnight process like some of your mates are doing and stuff like that. Like, they've been doing it for a while, or they've had it in their family, or they've had guidance from the right mentors as well along the way, moving forward. So
most of the people that talk, it's funny that you talk about the people that want, they want to make money now out of property. And I actually just got out of a meeting today where this client or potential client was, all he cared about was fast cash. He wanted to flip a property, where he wanted to buy something, and then either renovate it or redevelop it or whatever it is, and then sell it off. And I just said to him, I go, look, you're quite young in your sort of your property investing phase. Why don't you consider just getting a couple of long-term holds for a little while, and then cut your teeth on those smaller projects, hold on to them, see what growth you get out of it, and then start looking at the bigger stuff, and where you can start flipping them, right? Because everyone wants to be a property developer, or everyone wants to flip property and make fast cash, but good things come to those who wait. And that's what I've found out of property. The best deals that I've done are the ones where I've held on to them and for the long term. So getting back on track with the compound effect, it definitely only starts working after probably 10 years when it comes to property. Like, you really want to hold property for a minimum of 10 years before you start really seeing the compound effect, working for you. Like, a lot of people think, I've lived through a boom, so I can see, how fast property can grow. But wait till you live through 2, 3, 4 different cycles where you've seen things double each decade, if you've bought in the right areas, and that's where it's not going up by, let's say you've got $1 million worth of property, and in 10 years time it goes up by $1 million, and then another 10 years it goes up by another $1 million. No, like, if it goes up by $1 million in the first 10 years, then it will go up to $4 million in the following 10 years, and that right there is the compound effect.
And it's just got a little chart here as well that we'll read out to the audience out there and the listeners. With a 7-year cycle, which is basically a property cycle, especially here in Sydney, and from my own investment as well, I can definitely see that, where it's practically doubled, and I'm actually a bit short of the 7 years. So I know when it hits the 7 years, it's probably going to have tipped that mark where I've made 100% flip on it, which makes complete sense. So a little diagram here. If we had $100,000 as our start point, in 7 years it'd be $200,000. In 14 years it would be then $400,000. If we skip all the way down to 42 years,
which is how many cycles? 6 cycles.
So that's 6 cycles. So that's 42 years of waiting. You have now made from $100,000 investment $6.4 million.
That's massive.
It's a massive achievement. And when you think about it, in those 42 years, you could have achieved so much in regards to, you could have travelled, started a family, gone to various different companies if you work for corporations, started a couple of businesses, whatever. You can do so much in that time. That's it's a half a lifespan essentially. It's a long time, and people don't do it though. No, they don't.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of people. Look, there's a lot of our listeners that are doing it, but look, I'm definitely doing it. But there's a lot of people out there. I'd say the majority aren't doing it. Like, it's a crazy small percentage of people who only have, I think it's 5 investment properties or more.
Yeah, it's under 0.5%. Well, under 0.5%.
Yeah, it's something crazy small, and it's like, why wouldn't you? And it's not about the number of properties you have. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have 20, 30 different properties. It's more about the quality of properties that you have. But go out there and do something. And hold on to them. Like, forget about. Where is the market at? Like, I had this another client I was speaking to today. He goes, I don't know where the market's at, right? And I'm like, Yeah, but we're talking about a long-term strategy here. This is like 10, 20, 30, 40 year strategy, leaving a legacy strategy, you know. Let's not worry if it tips over like maybe under 5% and then, you know, it comes even 10%, it'll come back around, you know. Like we shouldn't have the view of just getting the property today, making money in 6 months and then getting out of it, because the cost of entry with stamp duty, your legals, the agent's fees, everything that you're paying to get into the property, you need to literally be in that property for another, you know, in good market conditions. You want to be in it for about 2 or 3 years before you even think about, oh, have I made any money out of it? So too many people are so caught up in now, you know, they're not thinking about long term. You know, they're not thinking about, you know, 20 years down the track. You know, is this going to be the right strategy for that? And you know, what will my portfolio compound to then?
Just to also go back onto that chart for a second, that would have been at 10% per annum compounded interest. So in the market, we know obviously it's never going to. That's a perfect world, 10%. We're never going to get 10% every single year or cycle.
Well, it's averaged out. That's right. Where 10% comes from.
Exactly.
So, you know, for our listeners out there, they're going, oh, you know, you can't get 10% every year. Yeah. Well, some years you get 15%.
That's right.
Some years you get 20%, right? Merriweather in Newcastle got 20% last year, right? So, you know, like it's just an average of the cycle, so 10%, and that's if you still buy in a great area. So, for example, the eastern suburbs of Sydney, on average, you're going to get 10%, right? But there are going to be years where you'll be flat. Well, you might just get 0%. But it's about who can persevere riding through that storm and hold on to their properties when rates start going up. You know, you can't redraw on your equity because you haven't made any because the market hasn't moved. I mean, at the end of the day, people who any captain can steer a ship through perfect waters, you know what I mean? But once a storm comes through, that's when it brings out the best. And you've got to have that vision of buying the correct assets, the correct products, so that your loans are structured in a way where you can weather that storm.
Could not agree more, actually, especially on the part with the smooth sailing. You know, it's that's where what we try to teach our clients here at Luxland is property entrepreneurship. You know, not all the time, and
it's a business.
It's a business. That's right, exactly right. There will be years where your business doesn't do as well as what it did the previous year, but that's where you look back and go, okay, what do I do? I mean, you don't change your marketing plan or anything like that in regards to the property being a business, but you look at maybe it's time to diversify your portfolio. Maybe it's time to redraw what you've got in regards to equity and park it somewhere else where it's going to start further compounding. It's about staying in tune, I feel, as well. Like, this goes back to the compound effect, but staying in tune with the market to know where you're going to get the best returns, where you are going to get the best compound effect, essentially, on every single property. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, the compound effect is a long-term game, and you've got to look ahead. You've got to be looking ahead 5-10 years when you think about it, or at least a cycle ahead, I feel.
10 years minimum.
10 years minimum, you know, and that's, again, another thing that we try to teach our clients here at Luxland is don't worry about the quick flips and don't worry about the small, like that stuff's great, and you will be able to do that and you know, potentially make a living off it as well, but stick to the basics first. Park your cash where you know it's going to make safe returns, and just like you've done, Zah, you know, you've parked it in multiple different sites, residential properties, commercial, etc., that it's just growing, and you are able to focus on 1,000,001 other things, and again, for our listeners out there, when we said earlier, this is something that applies to life, everything in life. I mean, Warren Buffett, you know, this guy I find very motivational, just because he's the definition of the long game. And it's where he says, he gets asked a question, what's the single most powerful factor behind his investing success? And without skipping a beat, it says, he responds with compound interest. Now, this is a man that is worth, I can't remember the exact number, but in the 80s of billions of dollars.
He's the richest man in the world.
You know, it's incredible. And for him to be saying that,